People ask me, what's the fastest growing religion in America? You know what the fastest growing religion in America is? Statism. A growing reliance on government. The belief that behind every problem there's some sort of governmental solution. Every year that's gone by, more and more, every time a problem emerges, increasingly the reaction in American society is, well, what can government do about it? Well, if only we elected the right president, our kids would be smarter. If only we elected better U.S. senators, our families would be stronger. I'd be a better mom, she'd be a better, I'd be a better dad, she'd be a better mom. We cannot allow, or continue to allow this over-reliance of government to replace the cornerstone institutions that have made the American experience possible. Because we are standing at a very real crossroads. As we move towards this election in 2010, people often ask, well, what is the choice here? The choice is not between Republicans and Democrats. It's not even between conservatives and liberals. This election is a referendum. It is a referendum on the identity of our country. And the question we are being asked is profound, but important. Do we want America to continue to be exceptional? Or are we prepared for America to become just like everybody else? Look at what's happening in Western Europe, where a combination of a growing secular society combined with an embrace of social democracy has that entire continent on the verge of collapse. You look at what's happened in Europe, particularly Western Europe, it is the most powerful argument that one can make as to how this over-reliance on government is a failure and will not work. You look at the destruction of families in Europe, you look at the stagnant growth in their economy. Europe stands as a stark example of how you cannot separate the moral and social well-being of your people from their economic well-being. And now America is being asked to choose whether we want our future to be one like that, or whether we want to continue to be exceptional. And if we want to continue to be exceptional, then we must embrace those things that have made us the freest and most prosperous people in human history. And many of those things are governmental policies. But many of them are not. Many of them are involved in the things that you do on an everyday basis. An era of real personal responsibility where once again we come to accept and understand that much of what will happen to us in our lives has nothing to do with who our president is or who our congressman is. It has to do with the choices that we make, right or wrong, and the role we choose to play. By the way, those of us, and I think that's perhaps all of us here today, who are of the Christian faith, have an even stronger obligation. The Christian faith is extraordinary for many reasons. One of the ones that, one of the real heroes for me, if you have a chance to do it, is to read the stories of the early Christians. The early Christians were amazing people. You look at the rate of growth of the early Christian church, it's truly one of the most remarkable stories ever told. One of the things that fueled the growth of early Christianity was the way early Christians lived their lives. Clearly the gospel is very powerful. The message of salvation. And all these things are things that clearly are the cornerstone of our faith and help to grow. But you know, one of the things that really helped early Christianity was the way Christians lived. Christians were heavily persecuted, as they are even now to this day. But these were folks that were being tortured. They were being burned alive. They were being chased from town to town. And yet they lived with a tremendous joy. And other people would look at the early Christians and say, I want what they have. How is it possible these people are constantly mistreated by society, and yet they're always happy? I want what they have. The second thing that was extraordinary about early Christianity is despite all the oppression that they were facing, they were constantly helping others. They would go out of their way to share what little they had with those who were less fortunate than they were. No matter how little they had, they would share it with anyone they found in need. Because Christianity is not just something you feel, it's something you have to live. And for those of us of the Christian faith, we have an extraordinary obligation to be ambassadors of our faith and of Christ in everything that we do. And that includes public service. That includes our lives as parents and as citizens. You cannot build walls where some aspect of your life, I'm a Christian on Sunday, but on Monday morning at 9 a.m. when I walk into my office, I'm not. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't. It cannot. It cannot. And that works perfectly with the things that made America great. Our faith calls upon us to serve others. It says, don't wait for the government bus to pick up your neighbor. If your neighbor needs a ride to the doctor because they're too old to take themselves, you take them to the doctor. And believe me, those are the things that made this experiment in limited government possible and the free enterprise system flourish in America. Without that, free enterprise and limited government are just political theories. Our culture, the culture that we share, the culture of our country, was one of the key cornerstones of our greatness as a people. And moving forward into this new century, as the American people come to this crossroads and decide whether we want to continue to be exceptional or become like everybody else, we must answer some important cultural questions as well. Do we truly believe the words of the Declaration of Independence that talk about how all people are created equal, that their rights are endowed come from their Creator? Because if we do, and if the source of your rights is your Creator, then your rights begin at your creation. And that means life at every stage is worthy of protection. In fact, we cannot allow, for the sake of our country's future, for there to be created a false distinction between social conservatism and economic conservatism. The economic and social well-being of your people is directly related to their economic well-being. And we must make that argument everywhere we go. The history of America proves it. And we must continue to talk about this even now. I believe that we live at such a crossroads moment. And I know that if we make the right choices, what inspired me to run in this race, other than my desire to win the Nobel Peace Prize, but I know you got to be there 2 weeks to do that, so, is that I believe with all my heart that if we make the right choices, our children and grandchildren will be the freest, most prosperous, and successful Americans in the history of our great nation. And if we make the wrong choices, they will be the first to inherit a diminished country from their parents. And you and I will be the first Americans ever to leave the next generation worse off. I know which choice I want. I bet you it's the same choice you want. Now let's go out and make it happen. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Excellent.